This interview is conducted on May 31st, 2021 via Zoom. You're listening to Severin Sorensen, Executive Coach and Curator of the Arete Coach Podcast, where we explore excellence in the art and science of executive coaching. I am speaking today with Executive Coach Janet Fogarty. Janet is a Vistage Chair of some 23 years and a Master Chair. In Vistage, she has had many different roles. She has been involved on multiple boards as well as adjunct faculty for training. She's been a Master Chair since 2006. She is also a Best Practice Chair and has worked with over 100 Vistage groups in 7 markets over 14 years. Beyond her Vistage work, she also does work with groups and individuals on group dynamics, thinking, and behavior work. She is familiar with some of the more important assessments, such as the work that would be done with fierce conversations. She's certified in DISC. She is certified in Emergenetics. She delivers workshops and coaching on the core model, triggered versus gift states, also known as positive intelligence. And additionally, she works with other owners and executives on transitioning. Now, before coaching, she was also a business owner, and she was a member of Vistage.
Then called Tech.
Then called Tech. So you were a member of a company that was doing about $65 million in revenue, 200 employees in a multi-state business. And was this the travel industry business?
It was.
That is a business that's been transformed. I think we'll come back to that topic.
My exit, yes.
That was your exit? It was a lot of people's exits. Yeah. That was one of those that the internet happened to me.
Yes.
It definitely happened to others as well. So my experience with Janet goes back to 2010, when Janet was one of the executives that was curating potential candidates for chairs. I had been a Vistage member and a Tech member and had sold the business and was interested in exploring chairing. And so she was one of the ones that interviewed me and vetted me, and then later on became one of the mentors for me through the process, introducing me to who would become my own mentor chair. And we've become great friends ever since. As president of one of the top travel companies in the nation in the 1990s, she was recognized as top woman-owned business in Colorado. Fogarty was invited to join a tech group now called Vistage, a peer advisory group where she rounded out her business acumen beyond her industry expertise. She became an astute listener of hard questions and took action, ultimately selling the company at a pivotal time of change in the industry. Janet's life continued to expand and flourish when she was recruited to join Vistage, the world's leading CEO organization, as one of their leader coaches. As the chair, who is both facilitator and coach of several CEO and C-level executive advisory boards, she creates the environment where members grow and increase their effectiveness and enhance their lives. Now, today, with some 10,000 hours of paid coaching and facilitation as trusted advisor and group facilitator, Janet has witnessed and understands the challenges of business leaders of running their companies as well as living their personal lives with meaning. Is it any wonder then, with this background, business owner, graduate training, certifications in so many different areas, and so many different roles working with peer groups and coaching groups, is it any wonder that I wanted Janet to be here with us today? So welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Severin. It's quite the honor.
Well, it's quite the bio. So I had a hard time getting through all those words. There's so much there, but it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to you today. So I have a first question for you I like to lead off with. It's a metaphorical question. You can take it wherever you want it.
Okay.
How did your feet take you into a life passion of executive coaching?
Well, I guess I was coaching before I knew it. Let's just say that. So where it turned into executive coaching was once I got under the Tech Vistage umbrella. But what drew me to that was when I look back, and those were the areas where I excelled in my organization and the part I was best at, loved, and had the most success at. So somebody actually helped me in the recruiting business who had retired from that and helped me create some criteria for, I had no idea what I was going to do after we sold the business, some criteria for living, back of the napkin type thing. And I just committed to that. And so I attracted the coaching side into my life to make it more professional and permanent. So
That's interesting. The old back of the envelope calculation. So sometimes having the intention and leading forward can create great discovery. What did you discover on your journey?
My discovery as far as, well, this is what I should be doing.
About yourself. Yeah.
This is what I should be doing. And I use the old adage. I joined the chair world to give back. And I stayed because, I get to grow and learn, and I can grow old doing this and just keep getting better. That's a sweet spot. I mean, that's why I stay.
Yeah, it's great. Well, you do a great job. So tell me about your member experience. Not everybody that I talk to has actually been a Vistage member. And there are many people who are probably wondering about peer groups and so on. So what was it like to be a member? And then how is it different being a chair?
Well, in a way, it was like having 15 coaches all at once on a hot seat. But I usually say that when I finally accepted, I can look up and out and outside of my business and get into a peer group. They had a 2x4 with my name on it. And it's like, oh my God, I wish I would have gotten there 15 years earlier. So when I talk about the hard questions that I leaned into, those were where I got some of the hard questions. And I thought, how dare they? I'm at the top of my game and all of that. And to this day, they were, gut punchers and made me stop and made me rethink. And I had never designed my life. So by them asking me, well, what do you want? Well, why are you doing that? Why do you have so many offices? And because I had just kind of gone with the flow and been absorbed into things and grew that way, and had never put my own path ahead of me. So I attribute that. Plus, I wasn't watching to what was coming. People inside an organization, inside an industry, always think they are leading edge. And my partner was a State Farm agent, and we had places on every corner.
Oh, wow.
And that's not what you want in the age of the internet. So I helped exit the business by selling it, and the group was very helpful during that. And
what year did you sell? Do you recall?
96. Signed the papers in 96.
That was it was a good year to leave.
Maybe
we had
5 years too late.
Yeah, we had a member in I'm a tech member. I started in 99, and in our group we had a person who had a travel industry business, and they did, call it 27 million my first year, and then 17 million, and then 12, and then 7, and then 2, and then out of business. And I can remember that each time we're just like, there's this internet, there's this thing is happening. And I kept hearing, oh no, my customers want me, they want my service. And we're just like, you just listen what's happening here.
Well, I was agile, and I craved new ideas. That's why I was loving being in a tech group. However, we were ingrained into brick and mortar. And so it wasn't pivotable. And so I helped my partners save their nest egg, and it was actually freeing to me to get out, because I chose the travel industry because I was a global citizen, right? From being in Italy, I wanted to stay connected. I didn't realize I'd be doing business travel to Iowa,
Yeah.
at that time. So, but I learned a lot what not to do in business. So that was
to use a metaphor, sometimes we find in life our ladder leaning on the wrong wall.
I love that. I'm going to say.
And the question that is it possible to get a ladder at the same height on another wall? Frequently not. We got to climb back down and put our ladder safely on a new wall. So you sold your business, you had an exit. By the way, anytime I see anybody sell a business, I think that's a successful thing, because so many people are unable to do that. So congratulations on that. So now you put your ladder on a new wall. You've decided to become a coach, a chair. So tell us about that journey.
I was definitely a greenie. They say it's malpractice the first 5 years. I thought I knew everything because I had been a member, and I was a pretty good coach inside my own organization. And so that blind spot actually helped me launch groups, because I didn't know better. And, it's a tribe, a community to join other coaches and facilitators that are also called chairs. And so I didn't want to go out on my own and do my own thing. I wanted to be autonomous, but part of something bigger that was part of that back of the napkin criteria. And so I was part of this bigger movement and a tribe that was incredible and that I could learn from, that was very helpful. So it was just fun.
So what does your chair practice look like today? I know you've expanded, you've contracted, you've done different things. What is it today?
Well, one of my other criteria, I'll keep referring to that because it's so crucial to my current practice, but one of my other criteria was variety. I knew I needed, variety and spice of life and flexibility. And so I've always kept the standard, the mainstay of our world with working with executives, business owners, and CEOs. I've always kept that kind of a peer group, and I love coaching with them. And I love my key group, which is key executives, because they're in the rock and the hard place. They have to manage up, sideways, and down. So that is a challenge and a wonderful spot. So I coach them as a group, not individually. And I've tried every other role that you can have with Vistage, been on, advisory boards, done some of the training, been a best practice chair for 14 years, was a best practice chair. I let that go. That's where I went to all those markets. So I worked with chairs. I was the coach's coach for a long time. And, that was a humbling experience because I don't like the term best practice chair. So I said, I just collect and share best practices. And I have been expanding my coaching practice a little bit more intentionally. Before I was pulled in.
In what way?
Well, I've kind of always kept under the cone of Vistage because I loved meaningful conversations and the rest of the world didn't seem to have them. And so people would ask me to do something over here or over there and, take a retreat or start a different kind of group for transitions and all that. So I'd do that, but I always just stayed under this kind of umbrella. And so I've kind of not outgrown that because that's a beautiful growing thing, that tribe and all the work. But as you know, there's more to it. And so my main company is called Abbondanza, which is abundance in Italian. Imagine that.
There you go.
And so I have different spin-off things from that. And so Fogarty Connect is my coaching practice.
So you brought up Italy. We're going to wander all over on this journey. Yeah. So tell me why Italy, and what have you learned about the people, the culture that helps you in your coaching practice?
And the way they approach life too.
It's up to you to answer any way you want.
Family ties and, well, first of all, I would say they live in joy, every day, from the art of having their, espresso, in the morning, their cafe in the morning, to, the way they drink their vino with their families, to laughing at something out in public. If you saw, that was one of the best things about COVID, is when they showed all the Italians that were grounded first, right? Into their homes and passing long sticks with wine on it and toasting to the balconies and going out and doing singing. So that zest for life. And then, as you said, the art that goes back and part of our history. It's just realness. And to me, that's like Rome is like the center of the universe besides Greece. It has some powerful pull for me because of the layers of history. And so that's also where I became a leader. I was always part of a large family, large group. We all moved in movements, and 10 of us went to Rome and to school. And then most of them went back after first semester, and I stayed. And I stood up and was helping the new people. And I just kind of became a leader at that time, became an individualized. And that was very powerful, because then I started saying, what do I need? What do I want? Huge pivot point for me in my life.
Well, I have a dear Italian story that was true for me that is actually a good coaching segue. So I was at Cambridge, and for graduate school for spring break, we decided to go to Italy for 3 weeks. Great. In America, you go to wherever. So
Yeah.
we were overseas, let's go to Italy. And so we went to the Language Institute there at the university. We memorized 400 words, 40 phrases, got a Let's Go Europe book, and off we went. And then we flew in, and we were supposed to land at an airport there near Venice, but it was diverted to a little military airport. I don't know why, but we landed and there were no customer services, nothing. And now it was dark and there was a little payphone out. And I'm like, it's okay. I've got, we learned what to say. And I go there and I ask,
words.
yeah, I had my 400 words, and I call a little pension and I ask for a double room, a little camera doppia. And how much does it cost? And she starts going, yucka, yucka, yucka. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have learned to ask the question. I have not learned to listen to the answer.
Right.
And I just started laughing. I just put my hand up in the air. I said, we're so screwed. And, somebody came and had mercy on us, and we figured out where we're going. But I think about this with coaching. So many times people say, just give me the questions to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of like going to Italy with the Let's Go Europe book. This is what you ask.
Good analogy.
But then how am I listening? I was so unprepared to listen. In fact, it was comical. She clearly understood my question and was answering it, and I had no ability to listen to it. So where does your mind go with that?
Well, I think that's spot on. And one of the things I think you were going to ask me, what did I learn from my early years that I wish I had known? So it ties to this. It's like WAIT, periods in between. Why am I talking? So I think that there is a way to do what you did, and for a coach to ask a question, and they have to let go of being the expert and I'm driving you somewhere. They have to actually just go, let me see if I can understand any of the words this person's saying. Let me just let it say, let me show them how could I get across that? I don't know. Let's go there. I don't know what we're doing here. So leaning into the I don't know part is a very powerful lesson for a coach to learn,
Yeah. Well, and I like your little weight and enneagram there too. So that's pretty cool. So you're a coach now for many years. What lesson have you learned recently you wish you had learned right in the first?
I can't want it more than they do. And that's actually very similar to what we were just talking about. I can't have an agenda. I can have an unconditional helpfulness intention. So that's my Ralph Crandom story. I thought I was such a great coach of my people, and I brought up blue collar people, and pretty soon I had somebody that was a frontline worker, overweight, severely, being our chief of staff, CEO, COO, wearing a 3-piece suit and making presentations. Everybody adored him, loved him. He could handle the largest clients in town. This is back in my company. A lot of nights holding his hand with lots of tears and encouraging him. And I thought I was so great at helping him because I saw his potential. Sold the business. He went to drive RTD bus, which is our bus system here. Ralph Crandon, if anybody my age knows who Ralph Crandon is, from the Honeymooners. Meaning that I pushed him beyond where he wanted to go. And I was all proud of that. And it was a real struggle for him. He was proud he got there, but that's not where he belonged. That's not where he was comfortable. That's not where he wanted to live. That wasn't what his true self was. So instead of my agenda, where I see potential in people because I can see things, I listen with all my senses. So I see a lot. I have to not listen to that as knowing. I have to listen to that as hints.
That's you bring up an issue. I had somebody I was coaching, and I personally was getting, I was in the wrong. I was personally getting very upset emotionally that they couldn't see the vision of their own company that was so obviously right in front of them. But it's like, I'm like, it could be this. Yeah, no, but I don't want that. I'm like,
You should.
yeah. Why don't you want that? It's right in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's difficult when you are a growth focused coach to coach somebody who is a lifestyle business, and they have legitimate reasons for being in a business, but they're not obvious. So I found that there are certain niches that I click well and others that it's good for me to kind of avoid. So you mentioned something a little earlier, quote, I can't have an agenda. So how do you remain in a state of not knowing when you're gathering data? How do you keep yourself from kind of jumping to a conclusion?
That's actually really good point, especially after doing this for several decades. You kind of have seen it a lot, seen it all almost, and over and over and over. And so I've learned to shut up when I have that. However, a technique it was a technique then, now it's a skill. And now it's just actually part of me. But they called it, a psychologist called it the left-hand margin, as if you're taking notes. So, if you pounce too early, that's like advice is in the cheap seats, right? So we haven't done enough uncovering. So I might think that, but I pick up on things on purpose, like a certain language they use. I don't know what it means, but I can see where this is going, but I don't know what they mean. And I just pick up on a few things, put them in the left-hand margin. Then I come back and ask about those. And that's mother lode. Then it opens up things. So I trust my intuition ultimately, not my knowing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I like
that
that
is a technique that makes me stop usually and check it out.
Now, what is this Emergenetics? You have it on your background. You're trained in it. It's not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm an assessment profile collector. I have 50 plus, and I am fascinated since psych was one of my majors, in the human condition, the human brain, and all the neuroscience that comes with it. And I let my DISC certification, which I kept DISC up for a long time because it was the easiest remembered in organizations. Nobody can remember their Myers-Briggs, and Enneagram was, over here, and so there were so many, and not everybody was on the same. So I always thought, well, what's easiest for a nomenclature for organization teams to use? And then I learned about Emergenetics, which actually the CEO for a while was in a Vistage group in Denver. It was headquartered out of Denver, but it's all over the world. And they started out because they came 20 years later than all those other assessments, which have done pretty darn good assessing profiles on all the different variations people can have. Emergenetics emerges genetics with nurture and nature.
Okay.
They absolutely, and then they tease out behaviors versus thinking styles. I haven't found anybody else that does that. So what we see, so here's the typical thinking preferences are similar to all the others. Predictive index, you name it, just maybe a little different color, but they're it's the same stuff. I'm not ever stuck to one model because I think they're all tools and I lay them on top of each other and I find the similarity. So, but Emergenetics takes the brain profile and the preferences, but then puts these purple arrows around it, and those are the behaviors. And then they pull that out and show this is what helped. They narrow it down to 3 behaviors, and the world is experiencing people through those behaviors. The behaviors can be changed because they were learned, right? Like emotional intelligence skills can change that because you're aware of someone else. But I've not found anything else that does that. And then it cuts to the chase. I also specialize, if you will, in Elliot Jacques' work of time span and management myths. So this tells me in a heartbeat, in one picture, whether or not someone has abstract thinking or concrete thinking, which is important to, when you're filling a group or when you're coaching someone to approach them in the way their style is. So I'm sure there'll be something else, but so far, it's the easiest by far for people to remember. It's the closest to placing people in the right butts in right seats, so to speak.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm going to lean into it. I also probably never met an assessment I didn't like.
Okay,
So
I'll connect with you on that and talk about that offline. But it actually fits my practice because I won't put someone in a group or coach them in a role. If someone wants me to coach somebody in a role until I understand their profile. And their profile of this tells me much more about whether they're the right person for the role. And I tie it to the work of L.H. Jacques of time span.
I like the time. I like the time span type thing. I know that Tom Foster does some work with that, and there are several others. I think those life journey questions really help you kind of peg where someone is and where they're likely headed. Yeah. So it's kind of fun. Now, another training that you've been involved with is Fierce Conversations. Tell me what you're doing with it and how that is used in your practice.
Well, that's just one of many, many tools that I have. I was early on doing training with chairs out at Vistage, Tech Vistage Academy at the time, and with Susan Carlson, now Susan Scott. And we had, believe it or not, the origins of that is David White, the poet, the corporate poet, spoke to our chair organization, and people were riveted. And it hit everybody, right in the heart. And so Susan Scott was talking about she wanted to create something that pulled a lot of that together because the conversation is the relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And so basically, it's a combination of all the different speakers and thinking and best practices we have at Vistage, pulled together in a very talented way. And so about the same time, critical conversations, crucial conversations, all those came out.
Yeah.
They're all the same kind of thing as having that tough conversation. Well, we already do that within Vistage, but that book provides so many different models and outlets. I was just one of the early ones that was getting certified in that to help grow that organization, but I wasn't interested in spinning off and going selling for Fierce Conversations at that time. Now it's worldwide, but I would say that that's just one of many things. Conversant, if you know about Conversant, right here, headquartered in Boulder, it's the art of mastery of the science and art of conversation, and it has some extremely powerful stuff. So I collect a lot of those things and put them in my toolbox, but I'm not a representative of one because then it's EOS or one size fits all. Yeah. And I go and leave them back here and then discern what's needed. What's it time for now? And then I might pull something like that out or three things and then mesh them together or help make sense of what they've already had. I connect heart to heart, eye to eye, soul to soul. And then if a tool is needed, I pull out the right one. I find some that are, I use for 5 years, and then a new one comes along, or I revive an old one. And then I go, oh, look, this applies to everything, reticular activating sensors. But I also can show you how they all connect. Well, it's like religions, well, they're all based off, these concepts or these concepts here of these tools, like the assessments, all kind of pull out the same stuff out of somebody. So I believe a coach, which goes to your question of what should coaches think about when they go to get certified, jumping ahead a little bit. I'm not as big on the certification because I think it takes hours and access to other thinking around coaching. So, and then it's the 10,000 hours thing, right? You just have to do it a lot. And not being one tool and that one size fits all. That will be a very limited coaching practice.
Yeah, that would be kind of like the role of a hammer. If all I have is a hammer, every solution needs a hammer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's nice to have other tools there.
So So when you talk about fierce conversations and all that, I use those as tools within my larger part of mastery of states, of people's states, which is the Nikki Nemiroff training and about, which I was one of the early ones on, triggered states versus your gift state or your natural child state. It's identical to the PQ positive intelligence work. It just, that has some different names around it. Emotional intelligence is about managing one state, being able to understand and communicate with others. All the mindset work that's out there. You have a fixed or a growth mindset. The intersection conversation that comes with conversant is one of the most powerful I've ever seen. So all those things to me fit into someone getting on top of who they are and what they're about so that they can then be more effective. So that's so I will use the fierce or whatever it is the tool to help that person wherever they are and wherever they want to be going.
So Janet, you're speaking as someone who's been in this for years and every year brought in a new tool and another tool and so on. For somebody that's just starting out in coaching, where would you have them start out? Because it'd be overwhelming to say, master all these tools of the toolkit right away. What's the foundation that somebody should get?
I would have them have a coach first, believe it or not, because then they'd know how it feels to be on the other side, what's effective, what's not, and make sure whatever training I get, it comes with people that do like level 3 questions, really higher level questions. And if they can start with that and have, like you talked about earlier, have the right heart and mindset about putting their personal self into it. I'm here to be unconditionally helpful. I'm not as familiar with all the different coaching organizations, but I think like anything, they equip you to, okay, now go out there, and it's who the person is. They have to be so in touch with themselves, I believe, before they have to do the work and go there first.
Yeah.
Before someone else. So I'm not probably the one to talk about, the coaching. I mean, there's no question. I don't feel the need to go out and get certification myself because over 10,000 hours usually tends to do it. And then, you get your measurements by whether or not people retain people, whether they come back, whether they refer, whether they grow.
Yeah.
That's one of my greatest pleasures is watching people grow. And, they don't even notice it sometimes, but I have that relationship where I can see the growth and then remind them who they used to be. So.
Oh, that's neat. It reminds me of the Eastern philosophy of intention. And people can focus, think, meditate, pray, but intention, positive intention, can create great things. So
you're speaking my religion, intention. That's what drives everything from me, being intentional about things. So that criteria that I did on the back of the napkin, I've honed a process that I do with people now. And I ripped off Jim Collins' hedgehog and made, the personal hedgehog, and people have to do that. Now I take the Ikigai from Japan.
Yeah, I love
and
Ikigai.
Add that. And what does the world need? What's the meaning for being? And so being intentional, designing a life, because that's what that hard question did for me, the sucker punch when I was 41. 40.
Yeah, it's funny. I only learned about Ikigai this last year, and I learned it by asking a question to somebody. I was on Clubhouse and I asked somebody, what's a book that you read that moved you? And they said, oh, definitely Ikigai. And I'm like, somebody wrote a book called the Ikigai. They go, no, it's a Japanese word. Look it up. And fascinating words.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a little podcast article on it.
I'm going to go look
very
that
interesting.
up.
Yeah.
And go into Wabi Sagu or Wabu Sagi. They don't have a definition. So I'm listening to the book about, it's like the tea ceremony, being present at the moment in an imperfect world, but just being at ease. And that's why a lot of Japanese hill country people are so peaceful. They didn't get into the cities and go into like we do. We got to have tasks. We got to do a lot. So finding that centered.
Yeah, I like the ease, peace, flow, and harmony.
Yes.
And yeah, you get a lot of it there. So that's interesting. Well, didn't know we were going on that journey, but it was a fun little tangent. So
Well, we're
coming
talking
back,
about coaching. That's what my
yeah,
coaching's about, because instead of hit goals, you better get yourself into the place you want to be, and
yeah,
then say, now, how do I want to contribute? My number one thing is, when someone comes to work with me, is they become CEO of their life immediately. And they're all CEOs, and they have their own personal services corporation. And then they do a service level agreement with whatever they're going to give their energy to. So even if it's a company, they have to, it's Deepak Chopra talks about that detached involvement,
yeah,
where you're there, but you're not so emotionally tied to it because you're committed to your own world. CEO of your life is part of the whole life plan, life design of, well, let's see, I want to raise kids to be this way. I want to have made this kind of impact. I want to be this kind of citizen. And we work backwards from that. And then just work on influence,
yeah,
Peter Schutz, I don't know if he said it originally, but I sure quote him all the time. If you remember him, the CEO of Porsche, he always talked about, power is not an authority. It's in the hands of the people whose cooperation you need. So influence is about all we have, with our spouses, with our kids, with our members, our
power is in the hands of the people whose cooperation we need.
you need. So you just need to increase your influence.
What's your best day ever as a coach?
I was going to say there's not one best day, but when it's best day ever type thing, the similarities that happen, when I see the look in the eyes, and it could be in an interview with someone, my first interview, to someone I've been working with for 20 years, which I do have those people, and they get that look in their eye where they have an aha themselves. And I didn't have to do much, but I held the crucible, the space for it. And I usually say to someone like, Severin, there's 2 chairs there, one next to you. There's you and you. And I facilitate the conversation between you and act as a mirror and a tape recorder back. So you're going to figure it out. So I love that and it doesn't have to be me that asks the question. It could be someone else that ask that question. It's like when you run a company and you hear the receptionist saying, "Oh, we don't do things like that here. We do it this way." And you're not having to push the values of the organization or the culture. It's like, they got it. And people are celebrating in that illumination. So besides intention, I work toward illumination. I hold the flashlight, but I can't push their face into it, right?
Yeah. Or keep their eyes open.
Sure.
Some light there. It's too bright. I can't see it. So that's good. I love your metaphors. So
I murder metaphors according to my family. I mix them up, murder them.
I love Dr. Marty's books, but I love the title of his one book. I never a metaphor I didn't like.
Oh.
So just people think, I do. I just love clever writing. And
I say chip off the old shoulder, and people go, no, that's not it. That's not it. It's mixing too,
Yeah,
chip off the old block or chip on the shoulder,
Potato.
Yes, there you go.
What is the most powerful question you've ever asked that moved somebody?
Just one?
Well, give me several.
Well, probably the most powerful, where it's at the end of a series of questions, is, and I could do this in the elevator between the 12th floor and the 4th floor. When I meet, just talking to someone, well, what do you do? And I turn it around and ask them questions. Where are you going with that? And then by the time the door's open, I go, are you making money? Where are you taking it? And they answer, and I go, is that okay? Is that okay? And I get off, and they're just going, huh? So when I ask someone that, when they, it's kind of rhetorical, but they have to think about it. Well, is that okay? Because that's my only yes or no, I think I ask. All the others are what might, I get a lot when I work with executives, there's a lot of knowing individuals.
Yeah.
Right? They know everything and they wouldn't be at their role if they weren't pretty darn good at it. So I do like to say, how do you know? Especially when they think, oh yeah, that meeting went great with that person. Well, how did it land on them? Oh, I think they did this and they did that. It's like, oh, really? You think, what about them? Well, I've been observing their behavior and it's this and this and this. So, well, how do you know? And they never know. I like the kind of decision tree thing. Well, what might happen if you do that? What might happen if you don't? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then to get people to the essence, because I have to get to essence right away. That's the essence of things. And that's part of where my insight helps pull that out sometimes. But I just go, and then what? And then what? Until they get to the real essence of what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then when they talk about things that are in the future, like kind of out there, but there's obstacles and courage usually between them and doing that, or they just see obstacles. And I just said, well, if you did do that, what would that make possible? And then they think beyond that action. That's one of my more powerful.
Yeah, I like that.
The Byron Katie work, about how do you know that's absolutely true? You have to be skilled in that to pull that, but that is also, I like the spirit of it. That's kind of like, how do you know?
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Can you share with us a valuable failure in your coaching experience that's proved to be a valuable lesson for you?
Well, besides my Ralph Crandon story, where I overcoached them, to something beyond their true calling or desires, or where I didn't follow my own healthy boundaries, my own intuition. And I worked with someone because I wasn't making progress. They didn't seem coachable. They'd show a little bit of movement and then we'd get there, and they were a member of one of my groups. So of course I don't want to let someone go, hold on to them too long. And just like someone holding on to an employee, have you ever fired someone too soon? But I would say I knew is out of my healthy boundaries. Am I answering your question?
It's really your question, so you're great.
Okay, so yeah, if I have to dread going to talk to someone or a call, then I'm not living to what my criteria is and what I believe very much what Maury Sheckman used to train on about drawing healthy boundaries instead of moving out because I can into their circle. Yeah. No, I got permission to say, I don't need to do that. That actually family and everything, it's like, that's not healthy. I don't need to play there. So yeah. I've done that too much.
No, it's interesting. You bring up a memory for me. I had a long-term member who was moving on. And so I said, well, can we go out and we'll just kind of like a post-member interview? Yeah, can we just, can you help me get better? And he said, yeah. And he goes, you've kept this member too long. And I'm like, tell me more about that. No, it wasn't himself. He goes, I'm leaving now, but I probably didn't have to leave now, because I'm in a different part, but I am so tired of hearing from this one member, and you, the chair, have not managed this. And so if I had, I'm telling you now, I'm probably not the only one feeling this way in the group.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, ugh. Yeah. And it's that thought of sometimes you keep somebody in too long. Sometimes you don't listen. Sometimes, for me, sometimes you're thinking, oh, I meet threshold with this extra member. I'll replace that person when I get my new member. And meanwhile, the deterioration of the group quality happens.
Well, that actually separates me, and not in a good way in some cases, because it isolates me because they think I'm being, I don't know, too high standards or too close-minded or something. But when you're putting people in a group coaching session and helping them coach each other, because that's really all that is, I believe strongly in discernment, because I've learned from those lessons, and I'm huge about group dynamics, because we were talking about strata and all that.
Yeah.
And if I put the wrong person in, even though I could help them and the group could help them, I'm not helping the group. It's like you owe it to your family to move them wherever they need to move. You owe it to your business to do the right thing and lay off certain people.
Yeah.
I think the group's an entity. Once it's created, I'm coaching the group now, and it's an entity. And where is it on its journey? And is it healthy? Is it high performing? Is it storming, norming? And so putting someone, that's like me continuing to coach someone that doesn't want to be coached. What? And so putting someone in, like your member, when they give you the look, Severin.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Been there.
But there's chairs who think, no, they've grown so much and I can really still help them. And I call that individual coaching, and they can do that. But I don't believe that works in a group environment. Same with a leader of a company. They've got their favorite. It's called a sacred cow, and they're trying to coach them into performance, and they're not performing, but they feel good about it. There's a point when the coach has to step up and go, I need to cut bait here for the sake of everybody. And then if there's a better way, refer them to someone else. You hate to leave people alone. And if they don't have healthy boundaries, and I can't move them into a healthy boundary circle.
Well, that's one could have a whole conversation on when to end a relationship and what are the signs. I definitely think there are times when the conversation needs to be had. For me, the big issue was ethics. And I read the Riot Act to my people. I said, look, this is the lawful, kind of what was the F. Hutton, we build businesses, the old fashioned way, working hard. I said, if I ever hear of anything that smacks of fraud or something else, you are out. You are out. I'll listen to you, but you're out. We are not, I'm not going to testify for you. I got to go anywhere. This is about honest business. And it's interesting how sometimes people, I'm amazed, they just have different levels of honesty in their life. Like, yeah, can't do that.
Well, I like it that you're joking about the strength of that you come with that, but I call that rules of engagement. That's what's wrong with everywhere. People aren't matching up expectations. And then if they're agreeing to you being very clear about that, and then they still do it, then their word didn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
And back to ethic, your word
back to
didn't
word.
mean anything.
Yeah.
So I am a strong believer in establishing the rules of engagement before any kind of relationship, and have all my people do that with their relationships. And I will tell you that be where I would have failed in a coaching relationship if I didn't either establish them real clearly, because I was quick and fast and lazy, they were too eager, whatever, I didn't follow my protocol, and or I ignored them.
Simon Sinek, I know you've heard him several times. He has the book called Why. Do you have your why?
Well, my why, and I'm going to modify it based off, have you heard of Michael Brody Waite, the TEDx National? Great leaders to do what addicts do. I will.
Okay.
Anyway,
send me a link. Yeah.
He narrows, or he pulls down to the reason he thinks leaders should act like addicts is because addicts in recovery, but mind you, not being addicted, live by 3 principles to stay in recovery. And so CEOs and leaders and everybody needs to do that also. And it's rigorous authenticity, surrender to the outcome. Whoa, that one is a tough one for coaches, right? And chairs. And then do the hard work. You can't do the hard work till you've surrendered the outcome, because then it's your agenda. So we're circling back. But my whole thing about it is living an authentic life, and in the search for illumination, another movie quote, from. So anyway, in the search for illumination for my own, I want to shine that light for others. So that's my contribution. But my goal is to remain rigorously authentic. And, I want to make sure that I bring joy and, gratitude with me and spark that, experience grace and have that all ripple effects, right? So if I can do that or have that occur.
What does your ideal coaching practice look like in the future?
Less of my trading time for money. So I want to be able to have a ripple effect in a way, where I earn money in my sleep, where I have financial freedom, and then I really go to town on doing the things I want. But I feel bound under this. I've still got to hit my nest egg before I can do that financial freedom. So the short-term practice is learn what my value is in the marketplace. And I, for some reason, have to have other people tell me that. I know what it is from what I've done, but that's one of the good things about working at Vistage. They charge, they get paid, and then someone gives me money. I don't tend to, I just flipped right into this. I was always sucked into the next role, right? So I never went out and marketed myself per se. So gaining more of an identity and a brand that I'm proud of, that I can market, that I can earn the better bucks, because I guarantee I see people charging for not doing the right things for people. And I'm like, I'm working my fingers with a bone, so switching that to not being such a head down slave, like I was, oh, look, I'm repeating what I did in my business and getting into a Vistage group, right? So I'm going to do the same. I'm working on the same thing here. Keep expanding my skills for sure. So for my own joy and for anybody I work with. But my practice will always probably contain 1 or 2 Vistage groups and any new variety they come up with. Maybe I'll try that. But for right now, it's expanding it beyond the cone of Vistage. And which is kind of why I loved Clubhouse. It's like a whole new world there, going, how do I fit in that world? Really determining that, because I am ready to play a bigger game.
Anybody listening to this recording to say, wow, she's wise. There's a difference between data and knowledge, and there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And there's a difference between wisdom and being sage, where you really have that ability to pull out from wisdom things. And I think you're at that far spectrum there where you are very wise. So you'll get my reference. If you say, I have another coach to give you a reference, you can have them call me. One question I always ask is this one from a book title by Clayton Christensen. Prior to his passing, he wrote a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? How will you measure your life?
I don't want to wait until my eulogy to have looked back, right, and say, how will people have measured it? And at the same time, I will want them to look like this. But I want to be doing it now. But it's, it's not huge and hairy, but it's be a beneficial presence. Experience love and joy in all I do and make an impact.
Well, thank you so much for your time here today. It's been really, really fun for me. I hope it was good for you. I'm always the one asking any questions.
No, a delight. We can swap stories forever. I learn from you every time I talk to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, let me tell you some things I learned from you today. I took a few notes here, and these were things that kind of popped out at me.
Okay.
One of the early things you talked about is this notion of wait, W-A-I-T. Why am I talking? Probably one of the singularly most powerful things that was said early in the conversation. And I recall myself being taught that every time when you're coaching, you hear yourself consciously talking, end it with a question mark. Like, just get right back to a question. Okay. So I love what you put there. You had a concept, I can't want it more than they do. And that's very powerful. And in fact, that's very dangerous whether you're a parent or you're a coach or you're an employer and you want something more. Yeah.
Salesman.
Yep. I cannot have an agenda when going into this, that it really is about them. You talked about mastery, this concept of 10,000 hours to gain mastery in a topic or to understand things. I love this. You're here to be unconditionally helpful. I love that lack of judgment, the openness, the caring, the sharing that's there.
A lot of this stolen from Pat Murray, shared from Pat Murray, just saying.
Okay, great. Well, and we are all standing on the shoulders of many others before us.
True.
So that's great. You have said that you are a business model nut, meaning you've never met an assessment you didn't want to take or try, and it's clear in your lexicon, you got many different tools and ways of thinking about things, so it can actually help you decide on a best course or better course for people rather than having to just use, I've only got a hammer, so that must solve the problem every time. Your mission is to connect heart to heart with people in terms of your coaching. You have spent some time working to become a master of states or thinking states, like between being triggered and having the gift states, if you will.
Emotional states. Yeah.
Emotional states. You talked about how keeping a word, having a word, the bond is just so important to you. You shared that in your own practice, you trust your intuition, not your knowing. You give advice to new coaches. Get a coach. If you want a coach, get a coach so you can feel what that's like. I think that's really helpful. And do your own work first. And then when you're doing it, to really focus on what you described as level 3. So there was just a lot here that you gave. It's going to be very fun to edit and think about how to create this as a tribute. So for anybody who's listening, Janet is the real article. She is a great coach. She's a dear friend. She understands this business in many different ways. And listen to the words that she has said in this, because there is real wisdom. Sometimes when people talk, they're talking words, but you are talking code talk, because almost every one of the words that you gave comes from a place where the word has a specific meaning. And so if you listen to this, or at least listen to this again, you realize all the different schools, training and so on, where these different terms of art have come from. And I think it makes it very rich. So thank you again so much for that.
Thank you.
So I have been speaking today with Executive Coach Janet Fogarty. She is a Vistage Chair, Master Chair, and has been with the organization some 23 years and has been trained on a number of different tools. I think this has been a really interesting journey that we've had today in terms of questions. And to reach Janet, you can reach her at janet.fogarty@vistagechair.com. You can reach her also at Janet Fogarty at LinkedIn. I didn't want to leave without stating, I love these things. So I thought abundance might be one of yours, and that's certainly the name. But living with intention, living with illumination, and living with rigorous authenticity are things that were important to you and things I thought were great. So it's truly rich. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Severin. It's been a delight.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I like to end the podcast with a few quotes to ponder. And so I have a few of them here. The first quote comes from Anne Morrow Lindbergh. Good communication is just as stimulating as black coffee and just as hard to sleep after.
Oh,
you could go a lot of places with that one, could you?
Yes.
From Peter Drucker. The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. From Wade Goodall. It isn't stress that makes us fall. It's how we respond to stressful events.
I would agree with that one. Yeah.
From Stendhal. I see but one rule. To be clear. If I am not clear, all my world crumbles to nothing. And then a final quote from a great coach, Tom Landry. A coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you always knew you could be. So until next time, be your best self. Seek to uplift others, be good, and do good. You have been listening to Severin Sorensen and the Arete Coach Podcast, where we explore excellence and the art and science of executive coaching today.